NASCAR is experiencing some high drama. Gordon and Rick Hendrick face off against the sport's regulatory body over a series of contentious penalties. From angry interviews to heated disputes behind closed doors, watch as two of NASCAR's top personalities argue about penalties and say something that everyone finds shocking. Buckle up, NASCAR fans, as we dive deep into Hendricks Motorsports on NASCAR Zone. But before we dive into that, do subscribe to our channel and hit the like button. This week, Hendricks Motorsports was given what seems to be one of the harshest punishments in NASCAR history. This was because of a rule violation that was found during an inspection last weekend at Phoenix Raceway. In question was what NASCAR thought was an illegal change to the vendor-supplied hood louvers, or vents, on all four Hendrick cars. NASCAR believes that if Cup Series officials hadn't taken the parts away, the Hendrick cars would have had an aerodynamic advantage over the other cars. Even though NASCAR discovered the irregularity a full 2 days before the race and did not permit the Hendrick cars to compete outside of the rulebook, the sanctioning body still handed down a fairly severe punishment that included a 4-race suspension and a $100,000 fine for all 4 Hendrick crew chiefs. In addition, NASCAR assessed severe point penalties to each of the 4 teams, as well as to 3 of the 4 Hendrick drivers. The injured Chase Elliott was exempt from this punishment because he was not the number 9 team's driver at the time of the offense. So now see what Gordon has to say about it. In a pre-race interview on Fox ahead of Sunday's NASCAR Cup Series race at Atlanta Motor Speedway, Hendricks Motorsports Vice Chairman Gordon addressed recent single-source supplier parts difficulties and the team's intention to fight a NASCAR penalty.
Yeah, first, Chris, I think, we just look at how this was handled. I think it could have been handled in so many different ways from NASCAR. Hendricks Motorsports prides ourselves in the precision, the detail in which we go about building our race cars. It's part of why we've been so successful over the years. But we also do it with integrity and respect for the rules and how NASCAR governs those. And so for us, it just feels like it wasn't done in that way. We feel like if our integrity, is going to be questioned, we're going to push back and we're going to appeal this for that reason. And I think there's also one thing I want to say is there's this kind of narrative up and down pit road that these single source parts that you're not allowed to touch them. NASCAR said you're not allowed to touch them, modify them. I guarantee you up and down this grid right here, there's not a single car that hasn't in some way touched or modified or done something to one of those single source because the product that we're getting delivered to us, one, the quality is not up to the standard. The parts that we're talking about are not up to the quality. So NASCAR allows teams to do it just for fit, but there's also the detail in which that part was designed and approved by NASCAR and making sure that it fits within that box on top of those other things just for the fit.
Hendricks Motorsports was given an L2 level penalty, despite the fact that the parts were never used during the race at Phoenix. Previous identical penalties were handed out as a result of infractions that were discovered by NASCAR during a post-race inspection. Gordon gave an example of how no penalty was given after the Daytona 500 dual races last year, even though 2 teams had made changes to a part from a single source that was not allowed.
Was there an earlier warning, or that's what the problem is? You're being punished for something that you
Well, this is why I feel like it could have been handled in a different way, is because this was found 30 minutes before practice on a day that this is a rule that got changed right on the cars at the very last minute. It was one of those things that when the season started, we found out there was going to be this rule change aerodynamically at Phoenix. So a lot of communication was going back and forth, what you could, what you couldn't do, created a lot of confusion. And so when we get to the racetrack, it's not even a mandatory inspection day, and NASCAR noticed it, didn't say anything to the team till after that practice session, which was not any competition practice. And then we went took it off and found out about it after the practice when NASCAR came to us for the first time.
To me, I think that's the most interesting thing. Obviously, a lot of layers about this conversation. You hear a lot of people in the garage area talking about this and this problem. Only one of them obviously is in an appeal situation with a massive fine and points penalty. But for me, in my own opinion, I think that's the heck, the catch here. The 6 car is the only other one that ever had this penalty put in place, and it was right here at Atlanta. It was after the race, folks. This is a situation that was never competed in. It was only practiced with, never under any kind of competition was this part. So for me, I'm interested to see what this appeal is going to do on that, stand alone.
Well, that, and like you said, I mean, there's multiple layers to this. There's more than just the part itself. It's the process during that day, and the officials saw the parts before you took them off. Like you said, you never qualified, you never ran the race. I really don't understand NASCAR's logic on why the penalty is so severe for something that didn't compete.
Yeah, and we actually saw a similar situation last year with some wheels, where a design was put in place and a modification happened, and yet, there was no penalty whatsoever, even though teams were told not to modify that part. So, but that car was never raced either, prior to the race.
Before we let you go, we got to get back and get to the folks in the studio. Want to comment real quick the impact on the race today with an entirely new set of crew chiefs for your drivers?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those particular races where maybe it's a little bit easier to call because of the type of racing that we're going to see here today. But our crew chiefs, have done a great. We have a lot of depth at Hendricks Motorsports. We're very fortunate of that. So I feel like we're in good shape. We were on we got a lot of positives. There's been a lot of discussions and planning to get here today, and I feel like we're going to be in good shape. But it's never the same without those 4 crew chiefs on the box, making those calls.
Alex Bauman, a driver for Hendrick, fell all the way from first place in the standings to 23rd place as a direct result of the organization's suspected rule bending. And his colleagues William Byron and Kyle Larson also experienced significant drops in their standings as a result of the incident. Will the decision by NASCAR to use Hendricks Motorsports as an example, the team, for the record, denies any wrongdoing with the dubious parts, be enough to deter other teams from attempting to violate the regulations in the upcoming weeks, months, and possibly even years? What do you think? Tell us in the comments. Be sure to hit the bell button and subscribe to our channel to get the latest updates. In spite of the fact that the sanctions imposed on Hendricks Motorsports were not in any way trivial or unimportant, it is still difficult to argue that these punishments had a substantial bearing on the situation as a whole. Hendricks Motorsports is the most powerful, well-staffed, and well-funded organization in NASCAR. Would a total of $400,000 in fines truly be considered a lot of money by this organization? The answer is most likely not, especially when you take into consideration the hundreds of millions of cash that the firm rakes in every year from race revenues, and of course, sponsorship dollars. Then there is the issue of the points deduction that could be made. Taking away 100 race points and 10 playoff points from each of Kyle Larson, William Byron, and Alex Bauman may sound like a lot, but does it really matter all that much when you stop and consider that all these drivers need to do to qualify for the playoffs is win a race? Byron has already been to victory lane twice in 2023, so he is in regardless of what the future holds. And both Bauman and Larson have been easily strong enough out of the gate to safely assume that it is only a matter of time before they each finish a race P1 on the leaderboard. When that occurs, they, along with Byron, will have an automatic berth in the playoffs, rendering the points deduction for this week almost worthless. The punishment for pushing the edge too far was supposed to act as a wake-up call to the entirety of the Cup Series garage, but it was a waste of time and effort to teach the Hendrick team a lesson. If NASCAR wants to create an environment in which teams are too afraid to cheat, the sanctioning body needs to either go big or go home. Do you need evidence? NASCAR kicked Kyle Busch's car chief out of the Atlanta Motor Speedway garage the day before yesterday, barely 2 days after it announced sanctions against Hendricks Motorsports. This came after Busch's number 8 Richard Childress Racing Chevy failed inspection not once, but twice. That's all for today. Hope you enjoyed it. Tell us in the comments what you think about the video. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel to see more of our videos on NASCAR updates. Look forward to seeing you in the next video.